On Fox 5, South Asian Americans, one of the fastest growing ethnic groups in the U.S., and as its community's roots grow deeper into the second and third generations, its achievements and cultural boundaries are also expanding.
Dan Bowens takes a closer look in our new series, South Asian Americans, Redefining the American Dream.
For millions of people around the country and around the world, we essentially bridge the gap between our two identities. I know for a fact that I'll never just be American, and I will never just be Indian.
It is redefining the American dream by removing limitations on just what it can mean.
And I think that what the next generation is doing is that they're expanding that base beyond just a few categories.
Embracing the American way without forgetting where you're from.
I imagine there's a fine line between the concept of assimilation and hanging on to that cultural identity.
I struggle a lot because there are so many cultural aspects of myself and my family and my faith and my religion.
A new generational journey of cultural identity.
We've had a lot of time to reset and reflect. And so who are we? Why are we here? What's important to us? I think that reflection of identity might be coming out.
The story of who South Asian Americans are is rooted here.
We're South Asian, we're all from the Indian subcontinent, but you can be from Sri Lanka, you can be from Punjab, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Tibet, all these countries.
It also means acknowledging the sins of stereotypes on American soil.
How much is your penny candy?
Surprisingly expensive.
The Apu character, popularized on The Simpsons, is perhaps the most debated example in pop culture.
We all face the same or similar problems with racial profiling.
Ravi Bala of Hoboken is the first person of Sikh faith elected mayor in New Jersey. Born and raised in the Garden State, his parents immigrated from India, the family encountering a culture shock early when his dad was urged to remove his turban before attending Penn State.
And he decided not to do that. He decided that there is no conflict between being South Asian and being a Sikh and being a successful American.
Bala's push into politics, an example of second-generation South Asian Americans charting a new path beyond what many of their parents envisioned.
As immigrants, when you come here, you try to stay in safer lanes. What is the fastest path to security, stability, prestige in a way, upward mobility, doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Mona Patel, whose parents also immigrated from India, would know. She's a former NASA intern.
My grandmother would have never had the opportunity to even think about this.
She didn't pursue a career in medicine or aerospace science. Instead, she founded several companies, including a marketing firm with clients like Nike, is now a playwright, and before the pandemic,
as an Indian kid, I got the memo that I was supposed to be a doctor.
She was an avid public speaker, her experiences as a strong businesswoman also stretching the limits of cultural gender norms.
Very strong women who've shown up and like equality and expect it. So I think that there's some dynamics there that are still working themselves out.
There are now nearly 5.4 million South Asian Americans living in the U.S. Within that group, people descending from India have a median income of about $100,000 a year, which is about $20,000 more than the national average.
It's nothing magical. It's nothing about genetically being superior or culturally being superior.
Sanjay Mishra is a political science professor at Drew University. He points to U.S. immigration policy of the 1960s as a reason for economic success today.
Which really put a focus on bringing in people who have high education. Once you kind of integrate into middle class, upper middle class segment of American society, then it's easier for you or your children to actually move up.
Hello and welcome.
Yasmin Varani's podcast, Brown Colored Glasses, takes a closer look at traditions clashing with evolving attitudes. She created it after the George Floyd protests, trying to find her own voice on race.
How we can begin to change the rhetoric, the narrative, especially as second and third generation South Asian Americans living in the USA.
All while hanging on to her roots, her family just celebrating Nowruz, the Persian New Year.
No one wanted to do this, so of course it lands in the hands of an immigrant. It's how it always goes down.
With Hollywood also embracing new stars in non-cliche roles, it's clear there is the beginnings of change.
We've come far, but it's taken a lot of time and effort, and we still have a lot more to do.
And Trisha Sakujawalia is watching it all. She's CEO and co-founder at BrownGirlMagazine.com, a website delving into just about every aspect of South Asian American life. At just 31 years old, she knows this journey is far from over.
And I've been grateful enough to have seen the South Asian community grow from the sidelines. And I know what it's taken us to essentially carve out that representation for ourselves.
And Queens is home to the largest population of South Asian Americans in the city. It's also where we've seen progress for political representation. Last year, 2 Indian Americans were elected to New York State Assembly. The first South Asians voted into the lower house of the state legislature. Dan Bowens, Fox 5 News.